Huge weekend in college football, huge revelations. Always happy to be back here for episode 31, week 8 college football takeaways. Mitch, you probably had a beer with your dad this weekend. It was probably a good time. You were probably watching it all. Just give me your overall thoughts on the weekend of college football that we just had.
Lots of surprises. There are definitely some games I thought for sure were going to go a certain way, and they did not. So we got a lot to unpack, and I'm excited to get into it, but definitely a lot of surprises this weekend.
Totally, and as we talked about it, each week for us, guys, like what we like to do is at this point in the season, there's more storylines than there are things to wrap up. So we have to be selective about what we chose. So today we're going to get into Georgia, Texas, obviously. That's the one that probably everybody was watching. And, in college football, there's, just like Mitch said, that first surprise of the weekend. And then I think BYU, Iowa State is doing this as well. And Indiana, who's the next one, is doing this as well. But BYU, just to be undefeated and the way they had to do it against Oklahoma State. Gonna dive into BYU for a second because I don't think we've given them enough respect through the year. And then Indiana, huge story, just what they just did to Nebraska. You have some other big takeaways, what Cam Ward did this weekend, a couple other things that were big time. Bama loses a second game. When's the last time Bama has lost 2 games, 7 games in the season? That don't happen very often. So a lot there, but I think we started where I live, dude, in Austyn, Texas. So you look at the Texas Longhorns going into the game, clearing away, at least right now on paper, was the number 1 team in the country. The big story was all the veteran players that they had coming back, especially on the offensive line. And it was crazy down here in Austyn. It felt like there was more celebrities on the sideline than I've ever seen at a football game. Joe Rogan shooting the cannon off before the game, dude. I was like, yes, this is awesome. But Mitch, you think of that game and we're going to get into different elements of the game. But as you looked at that football game, what'd you think overall based on what you were thinking going into it?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this a little bit before we hopped on here, but I mean, it just, to me, it looked like Quinn Ewers was, from the outside looking in, it looks like Quinn Ewers was trigger happy and he was throwing the ball all over the yard, making bad decisions, but he was playing with people in his lap the entire night. That offensive line got their ass kicked. And I know we have some numbers and some stats, but they just got their ass kicked up front. And going into that game, it's easier for me to say now. I just went into that game kind of forgetting about how dominant Georgia has been. And I was an idiot. I mean, they're different. They're different up front. They're different on defense.
Keep going with this, but as we talk about this game, we're not even going to talk about Georgia that much because I really think, to Mitch's point right there, the Dogs just showed us they're still the Dogs. You know what I mean? It's
exactly.
What the hell do we say? What we saw on Saturday was what we've seen the last 3 years. It's here they are. They're back again. So it's what do we even need to talk about? Carson Beck didn't do anything crazy special. The story was Kirby's defense. Yeah. So, keep going on just, overall thoughts continued from that football game.
I think Quinn Ewers is always a guy who plays so calm, and that's what me and Austyn talk about all the time. The best quarterbacks in the country are the ones that just look so calm and make it look effortless. And he is a top 2, top 3 guy of doing that in college football. And just the pressure they got to him and the way they were getting after his ass the whole night, he didn't look calm at all. He looked frantic. He looked, skittish. That's not him. That's not who he is as a football player. It's just a credit. Or not, I mean, I guess we're talking from Texas' perspective, just how poorly they played up front and how much they got their ass kicked. So I really don't put that game on Quinn Ewers at all. And did he play perfect? No, but you're playing against Georgia. And I don't know. I just think that they got their ass kicked up front, and I know you kind of agree on that as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, again, the storyline in any football game of that magnitude, and you could see it all over the field. I mean, these are NFL dudes on both sides of the ball. So, the storyline of those football games typically ends up in the trenches. And you had going into the game for sure, many people said on national television, all the talking heads and everybody, Texas has the best offensive line in the country. A, definitely didn't look like that. B, is Georgia's offensive line looked better running the football than Texas's did. So when you think about what that implicates, like, I think it leads into the quarterback situation. But as we go into the quarterback situation, what I love about our show and the depth of our perspective and the honesty that we just bring to this is like the whole country, when Quinn Ewers gets taken out in the second quarter of that football game, and the guy he gets taken out for, his last name is Manning, and he ran for 30 yards on a scramble, like, the national narrative this week is going to be, is Quinn Ewers the guy at Texas? And, when it's inevitable, when is Arch going to take over? Okay? That's what everybody's listening to. That's probably, if you're listening right now, like, that's probably what you're thinking right now. Well, let me tee this up for Mitch. You have 29 yards rushing in the entire game for Texas. 29 yards rushing in the entire game. They had 37 yards of offense in the first half, the lowest that Texas has had in a half in over 30 years.
Yeah.
In the game, the offensive line surrendered 7 sacks and 10 tackles for loss, meaning 17 plays were made behind Texas's line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Mitch, what's that like as a quarterback?
Well, I mean, just from like a philosophical and schematical standpoint, if you are behind the sticks, that just makes, obviously, like, no shit, you start 2nd and 15, it's harder. 2nd and 12, it's harder. But you put yourself in these pass situations and early downs where you let a good defensive line pin their ears back and just pass rush. That's why it's going to be impossible to win. It's going to be impossible to win. And when you get, 12 tackles for loss, did you say?
10 tackles for loss, 7 sacks.
7 sacks. Yeah, it's just, I felt like just watching the game, it was never a 2nd and 6 for Texas. It was a 2nd and 12, 2nd and 11. And they just put themselves into passing situations, which allowed Georgia to play pass defense and allowed those 4 pass rushers to get after the quarterback, and the O-line didn't do a great job of protecting. So it's just, there's a lot more that goes into it than just the play itself. It's the play before. It's the down and distance. And Texas just was never in a good situation the whole night, and they couldn't protect when it came to, nut cutting time.
Dude, and you say, never in a good situation all night because of what they weren't able to do on 1st and 2nd down. It's like, that's why you're 2 for 15 on 3rd down.
Yeah, it was like 3rd and 15 every single time.
100%. I would say a big takeaway was Kirby Smart kicked Steve Sarkesian's ass. And the reason that I say that is because everybody talks about Sark as they should. He's a very, very good play designer. Very, very good. And Quinn Ewers is notably like more of a pocket style quarterback that he's reading the defense, like he's calm and patient in the pocket. He's going to read that thing out. And he undoubtedly has one of the best arms in the country in terms of what he's able to do with the football. Yeah. So to me, that's a storyline walking away from the game is you tell me who won, Kirby's defensive front and Kirby's defensive scheme or Texas on offense. Because that was the same Texas football team that been there the first 6 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
Why weren't guys open? Why was he getting harassed? Again, not blaming Sark, but if we're going to crucify Quinn Ewers because of a decision to take Arch out in the second quarter, it's like, I think that's more of the deeper thing. Quinn has been able to play the game on schedule all season, and he's been great.
Yeah. Yeah.
This game, he never once looked like he had the opportunity to play the game on schedule. And there's a lot of reasons there, not just Sark, O-line stuff too. But it was a hell of a game, and sorry we had to cover the negative side of it. But, once again, the dogs are the dogs. So that's it. It's hard to not watch that team do what they just did and go, yeah, they're still the number 1 team in the country. Yeah. It's hard not to do that. Remember, they only lost 1 game last year in the SEC championship and got held out of the playoff. Yeah. 2 national championships before that.
Yeah.
You guys have run college football for 3 years, dude. Here we go. So anyway, that's and Alabama, with 2 losses, you kind of now can reflect and go, this is what's so great about football, dude, is Alabama caught lightning in a bottle for the first half against Georgia. Played the best game or the best half and the best that they could have played. And Georgia wasn't able to overcome it, even though they almost did. Yeah. And now you're seeing that second half Georgia football team, here show up. Anyway, let's move on to BYU and Indiana, the the little engines that could, dude, in the big picture of things. Like NIL now, like these situations, like you wouldn't expect a team in Provo, Utah to be undefeated through 7 weeks. You wouldn't expect a team in, I think it's Champaign, Illinois, or I don't.
No, Champaign is
that
is
Illinois?
actually Illinois. Well,
Okay.
it's also Indiana, goofball. Different
Okay.
state.
Okay. Okay.
This is
My bad.
Bloomington, Indiana.
My bad. That tells you what a California kid knows about Illinois and Indiana. I'm sorry.
Dude, yeah.
But regardless of where Indiana University is, all right, just to have two teams that you would never expect to get, they would be getting plucked from the transfer portal more than I would think that they would be receiving from the transfer portal. And both teams are undefeated for different reasons. We're going to jump into BYU. So this was a tough one because Oklahoma State has not been having a great season in terms of their record, but they've played everybody tough. Yeah. They lost a game in overtime to a good Arkansas team. They lost another game by like a field goal or something really close early in the season. And so it's been a tough season. So the point is that like, they're coming into the game to beat an undefeated football team playing their best football. There's no lack of focus on that side. And then you get BYU, who turned the ball over 3 times in the first half. And you find yourself in a situation where you're just kind of trying to stay in a game like that. And then when it comes down to it, it's 35-31, and you got a minute and 13 left on the clock. BYU is down 4. You got to go the length of the field in the minute and 13 seconds. Mitch, take us into obviously that feeling again, and then what you see going on at BYU that's allowing them to have success that, as I was saying, is like far beyond what we would have anticipated going into the season.
Yeah, and just to kind of revert, start backwards, I think they do. First of all, they have a great defense, really good defense, and they have a really good quarterback filled with with an offense with some good skill players, good backs, good receivers, and a solid offensive line. Also playing in Provo, Utah. That's a tough place to play. Also probably the most beautiful football stadium in the world.
Backdrop, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
It's just unbelievable. But that's a tough place to play. I mean, you're at BYU. It's a Mormon school. There's not a lot of other college activities going on there. So when the football team is playing, it's a big deal, and they're gonna get after it. But yeah, I mean, you're down 4 points, have to score a touchdown. You have all 4 downs on this 2-minute drive, and you got to go make a play. And just watching our guy Retzlaff out there, he just had no panic, dude. Just was so calm. Had a great run in that 2-minute drive to right. He had a long run in that drive, didn't he?
He had a long drive. He had a long run. Yeah,
he had a long run in that drive to extend the drive. 2 great throws, the throw at the end to put him up and. But yeah, just there's 2 ways you can think about it, and we've talked about this before. When you go into a 2-minute drive, it's I have to or I get to, and to me, BYU's an I get to team. They get the opportunity to go there and steal it and win it at the end, and it was an awesome game, dude. It was such a great football game. Friday night, dude, what a Friday night game! But probably the best game of the weekend, to be honest. So. Really, really, really cool for them, and I think we also, talk about Indiana. We also forgot to talk about Iowa State. Just kind of a few teams that are, like you said, the teams that you feel like would get plucked. When we talk about Indiana and all the guys they've gotten from the portal, tell me, you have some numbers about their guys and their roster and how they formed it this offseason.
For sure. Let's jump to Indiana in just a second. Like I want what you just did. Iowa State, Indiana, and BYU is like what I just want to point out, because you brought up those 3, and they are similar. They are similar. Is like culture. Yeah. Culture. You can feel it. Good defense, but even more than good defense is defenses that are making big plays and capitalizing on turnovers.
Yeah.
Like the turnover margin is in those 3 teams' favors.
Yeah.
And all 3 teams have great quarterback play right now.
Yeah.
So when you go good opportunistic defense, you go good culture, and you go good quarterback. Yeah. Now all you got to do is win a couple of those close games, and you got the juice, dude.
Yeah.
And I feel like all 3 of those programs right now just have crazy juice behind them. And I thought you did a good job with Retzlaff's drive. And the only thing I was going to say at the end of it is like, what'd you say? You either get to or you have to with that? Well, I'll add to the get to. Once you decide that you get to, and you're 7-0 or 6-0, and you have that crowd behind you, it's almost like, I don't care what the clock says. I don't care what's happening in the game. I know we're going to win this shit.
Yeah.
Like a feeling of inevitability.
Yeah.
And I watched the whole drive from Rocco Beck at Iowa State to beat UCF in a game that they were down the whole game.
Yep.
And then I watched Retzlaff's drive. And it's very hard because you just have to feel it as you watch it. And, you know, probably you quarterbacks that have been in these types of situations, like, feel it better than others. But I was just watching zero panic and almost this feeling of like, I know we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And I felt that a couple of times in my life, dude, and it's one hell of a feeling. So it's just the juice that's going on there. But Mitch, you lobbed it up for me, dude, as we get into Indiana. So just some things that other people don't know or don't think about. So Cignetti, new coach, right? And this coach puts his culture into place, which is awesome. Well, how do you put his culture into place? This guy brought in 27 transfers, and 13 from James Madison alone. So roster turnover, well, okay, Austyn, 27 transfers, like, were they good players or not? 14 starters, 7 on each side of the ball. Yeah. Brought in through the transfer portal, and 13 guys from one university. So it's kind of interesting. And, you know, like JAMU, like, did JAMU's culture, like, in a lot of ways just come over to Indiana and, like, they kind of still are doing their thing, but now as a part of, like, the Indiana culture? Like, I don't know enough within that program to know that, but it's interesting just because when you look at a team that's now 7-0 and absolutely annihilated Nebraska this weekend, it's like, that wasn't who they were last year. Like, how'd they do that? And I think those are some of those things that are underneath it that are going on. What have you watched as you've watched Indiana play? Like, to do what they did this past weekend, there was questions of their schedule prior to. And Nebraska's not a top 15 team in America, but they're a damn good opponent.
Yeah.
And you take them out behind the shed, dude, and spank them in front of everybody. Like, what are you seeing in the way they're playing? What are you seeing that's showing up on the field for Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, an opportunistic defense. Not an, you know, you just listen to their head coach talk, not an arrogant culture, but a confident culture.
Very. Yeah.
I think that those guys wake up every day and think that they're the shit, and not in an arrogant way, but in like a, I'm you know, in a maybe not, I say cocky, but not in a bad way. It's like,
dude, it's so funny. Keep going. But I wrote on the piece of paper, I take a couple notes, and I wrote Indiana in all caps. They know who they are.
Yeah.
And it's keep going, but exactly what you're saying.
It's just like, to me, it's like a blue collar group of guys who, like, roll up their sleeves, but want their sleeves to roll up a little bit more to show their muscles. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just kind of how that's just kind of vibe I get from them. And then I got a few buddies on that team. 2 of my favorite teammates I play with at Wake, starting slot, starting running back. They're having great years. So it's been awesome to watch those guys. Like, 2 of my best friends, Justice Ellison, Keyshawn Williams, like 2 of my guys. And I think, you know, when I talk to them on the phone, like, I just think they feel like they got it. You know, like, it's just they kind of feel like they got it. And I'm able to see them do things and play the way that they know how to play and kind of play free and play loose. And I think that in that program, you're kind of given the freedom just to, like, play your game. And those 2 guys are 2 of the best football players I ever played with. And finally being able to see them to kind of play their game, bro, they're going off. And I think everybody on that team has been able to do that. I think they kind of just they recruited people for a reason in the portal. And they're like, all right, you're obviously a great player. I don't want to change what you're doing. Here's our scheme, and here's how we want to use you. But be you and play and be you. And while you're being you, kind of have a chip on your shoulder and roll your sleeves up and be a badass. I think that's
I've watched him a few times this year, but you're a little bit more familiar, even offensively, with 2 of your guys, like, on the offense over there. What do you see, or what do you feel from their offense that makes them so successful? Because Nebraska's had a good defense on paper coming into the game. 56 points. Now Nebraska turned the ball over 5 times. But what does Indiana do on offense? Like how would you describe what they do on offense and what's working for them right now?
They're very multiple. They get in a lot of formations. They do everything. They do a lot. My brother played for that staff at JMU, and we just talking about their playbook. They run every concept, every running scheme. Like, they do it all. But like the thing that, even when they were at JMU, the thing that staff does such a good job of is they are always on schedule. Like, they don't take negative plays. Their quarterback's completion percentage is always around 75. They're running the ball for 4 or 5 yards a carry. They just play good football, and they don't turn it over. Their defense does turn it over. They just play very complimentary football, and they don't beat themselves. As lame as it sounds, they're just very efficient with offensively, and they create turnovers on defense.
Totally. It's one of those, it's interesting, like, when you have as much success as Indiana's had, like, who's their quarterback? Like, the reason I just asked the question is because most people don't know who their quarterback is. What team is undefeated in the country that you don't even really know who their quarterback is, and they're scoring a lot of points?
Yeah.
Like, I think to Mitch's point, what I see when I watch them is he's saying they do everything. Well, I'm saying that everything is balance.
Yeah, 100%.
They run the ball well. They throw the ball well. They run it downhill. They put it on the perimeter. They run read zone with their quarterback with the crawfish option out there on the bubble. They also drop back off play action. Mm-hmm. And they're doing it, like Mitch said, in advantageous situations. So they're very comfortable gaining 3-4 yards on first down. Second down, whole playbook's open to us. Let's now work an intermediate passing concept with a lot of options. See what happens. He takes the check down. It's 3rd and 1.
Exactly.
You know what? We're going to go for it on 4th and 1. So fuck it. Throw a post and let's see what happens. Like, you're just seeing balanced, patient. I'm sorry to your two guys. I don't know a player on the Indiana offense. It's like, I think that tells you a lot about who they are, just in terms of spreading the wealth, dude, and just being a damn good football team. And I was going to say, this is the comparison that I want to make. BYU, Indiana, and Iowa State feel a whole lot like TCU did a couple years ago with Max Duggan. Like, it's that feel.
Yeah.
Max, all the respect in the world. You're a great quarterback, bud. But, like, when he got up into the NFL was like, like, you're not really that. But that fucking guy looked like Tebow there for a little while. Like, they had the juice. They had the juice.
Yeah.
And who'd they beat? Was it Michigan? Like, going into that playoff, nobody, I think they were 14-point underdogs. Nobody gave them a chance in hell, and they put it on Michigan.
Yeah.
It's like, that's that belief that Mitch is talking about when he says, my two boys, like, they just say, like, we kind of got it. Like, we kind of got it going on over here. Like, it's that invisible shit that we love. You watched the entire game, unbelievable football game. We're going to obviously shout him out in the next segment, but Louisville, Miami, Cam Ward, I mean, there were 97 points scored in the game, 52-45, but just quick takeaways, what you saw in that football game.
Same thing we always say, dude. Just no panic, sense of calm. Like, he had like a 3rd and 20 scramble to kind of ice the game for him. Got a first down. And it was like he runs fast, but just looks like he just looks so slow. Like, he scrambled for 20 yards, and it looked like it took him 10 seconds, but outran everybody else. Just because he's just so relaxed and so smooth and so calm. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see him play, and there's, like, no panic. And he reminds me a lot of Mahomes in that sense, that he just plays so smooth. And, again, like, Mahomes' scrambles don't look fast. And then you just see him outrun, like, Fred Warner. You're like, what the hell? Like, how? Right. But it didn't look fast. But it's just their pace of play is just the game slows down for him. So it was an awesome game to watch. Louisville put up a good fight, and they're scoring a bunch of points back and forth the whole game. But Cam Ward, best player in the country. So
that's probably a good one, guys. Offensive-minded dudes, like, go type that one in on YouTube and just watch the highlights back on that one, because there's a lot of explosives and a lot of stuff going on the whole game. Mitch, Alabama, Tennessee, you go down into Neyland Stadium for a rivalry football game. You knew the juice was going to be nuts in there, but you and I both going into the week were like, dude, you got the more experienced quarterback. Bama's pissed off because they haven't played to expectation. They're still trying to get that taste out of their mouth. from that Vandy game. It's almost, and Tennessee has been struggling a little bit on offense, and you almost like get the feeling of inevitability here too, where it's like, hold up, they lost to Vanderbilt, then they barely squeaked it out against South Carolina. Okay, where's the Alabama explosion, roll tide? When's that coming? And you expected it to happen.
Yeah.
And Tennessee's offense didn't even play that well. And Tennessee leaves that football game with a 24-17 victory. Like, what were your takeaways just watching for those Bama and Tennessee Vol fans out there listening?
Yeah, that was the biggest shock of the weekend for me. Honestly, even a bigger shock than Georgia, Texas. Yeah, I would have thought if you told me Texas is going to win that, or sorry, Tennessee is going to win that game, I would have told you they scored 42 points. And they didn't. They scored 24 and played really good defense. They ran the ball really well. And, in the last quarter when they did call on Nico, he made a few plays down the stretch that kept him in. He threw a touchdown at the end. He made some mistakes. But, again, I think they said last night that was his 8th start.
Yeah.
That was his 8th start. Like, he's got, 30 more in college football. Like, that was at number 8. So, let's calm down here with our Nico slander. I still think he's going to be a great player.
We have to calm down on both fronts because this is the roller coaster of quarterback. Is like everyone wanted to build him a fucking statue after they beat Iowa last year in the bowl game and put 50 on NC State. So they went from wanting to build a statue to now tearing him down. And it's like, thank you for being that voice of reason of just like, dude, we're 8 games into his career. Can we take a deep breath for a second?
Yeah,
for sure. But he'll learn from those environments. And to me, the story of the game was the Tennessee defense. They lost one of their captains and leaders in the linebacking core to a season-ending injury last week, and then they come into this week, dude, and shut Alabama down. And Jalen looked a little impatient as a passer. He was just seemed like every ball that came out of his hand was a nuke, dude. Literally 100 miles an hour. And usually when you see that, it's just, it's not all together. But to shut down his arm and his legs in a football game with the weapons, especially that freshman receiver that they have, a surprising one. And then last one was LSU. I think, guys, for those that don't know, this quarterback down at LSU is playing damn good football right now. Yeah. And I think he's the guy that just because they lost to USC, everybody kind of put LSU to bed for a little while. And it's I told you coming in the week that they were going to kick Arkansas's ass. And it's they did exactly that. I just think that they are playing at such a level offensively. And sometimes that early loss really helps you. And then you squeak it out against Ole Miss and you squeak it out against South Carolina. And now you got that juice behind you. So I think LSU is going to be a lot of fun to watch throughout the rest of the season. And Nuss is playing high-level ball. Any other thoughts on Week 8 in college football, Mitch?
No, just a lot of surprises, but it was another great week of ball.
Dude, and it just seems like the lineup right now just gets better and better every week with the playoff and all the implications. It's it used to be that you had to be a no-loss team or a one-loss team that was 10-1 to even think about potentially going to the playoff. And now you got 40 teams or 35 teams that in scenarios could work their way in. It just makes college football a lot more exciting. And we started this show for much bigger reasons than that, but it's a hell of a time to be in the golden age of college ball, man. So anyway, guys, that's Week 8 takeaways. Now we're going into our quarterback standouts. Peace.